Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andrew.
And I'm Rachel.
We are Picture the Scene podcast. We are a true crime podcast aimed to put you, the listener, at the scene of the crime. Now, each week we delve into the murky world of lesser known crimes from the UK and Ireland, and occasionally we venture into renowned cases from around the globe. And if you like what you hear, please do follow us on whatever social media platform you prefer, subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform of choice, and if you have the capability, give us a rating and review as well. It really means the world and then some to us, doesn't it, Rachel?
Yeah, we love hearing from you. We say it every week. We aren't just paying it lip service. Like we love interacting with our lovely listeners. We have some of the best listeners going. So please let us know what you think of our episodes, what you think of our show. Love hearing from you.
Yes, we do. And if you like us that much that you want to support us, then please do head over to Patreon, where you can support us for as little as £1 a month. We have bonus content and episodes, depending on your tier, and it really does help us carry on. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Claire Rodham, who joined our Patreon family a few weeks ago. Claire, I know we've been chatting anyway before you became a Patreon supporter, so thank you so much for joining. We appreciate it so much, and we hope that you're enjoying our back content. Now, as with any true crime podcast, listener discretion is always advised. And today, I'm touching on a very emotive set of subjects: abortion and the eventual death of a child. Now,
Oh
abortion is
dear.
oh
I
dear
mean,
indeed.
just for context, listeners, I know we're pre-recording these, so I think I'll have given birth by now, but at the minute I'm 35 weeks pregnant. I don't know whether I'll want to be discussing this.
You'll be okay, Rachel. But abortion, yeah, it is a subject that people tend to feel strongly about, whichever side of
Mm.
the fence that you sit on. So we, and by we I mean Rachel and myself, we won't be expressing our personal opinion on it. And if we think abortion should be an option available in society or not, because we're not here to open that can of worms. We're just here to give you facts on a case. And we would only, and if we did, it'd only cloud the ability to do that. So on this occasion, we're not going to be sitting here telling you that people should or shouldn't be able to have abortions, because that's for another time and place, isn't it, Rachel?
Well, and do you know what, Andrew? I really don't think it's any of our business. Like, and I
Yes.
mean that it, with all due respect to every single one of our listeners, your own opinions and thoughts and views on it are yours, and that's perfectly allowed and normal. I mean, I don't think I would ever express my thoughts and opinions on abortion because I've been so lucky not to have to face that in my life. That I would be doing it for without any like empathy for either side of the coin, if that makes sense. So yeah, I just think that like it really is your own business and no one else's. And we at Pictures Scene completely respect that.
Yeah, you just put that a lot better than me, Rachel. I agree. I second that. So, and just to finish the usual blurb, we do, where possible, now release episodes a week earlier for our Patreon supporters. So if you want to hear next week's episode today, then head over to Patreon. And this actually might be especially useful if you don't want to hear today's episode due to the subject matter. So how are you doing, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, after that kind of headliner, yeah, probably a little less chirpy than I was when we first started recording today. But I'm all good. Thanks, Andrew. How are you?
I'm sparkling, thank you very much. Well, I've just come back off COVID, as you know, but I'll tell our listeners. So I have no taste at the moment. Now I don't
And
mean in music or anything like that, because that's never been there. But um, taste in my mouth. But yeah, it's weird. Or smell.
and just for yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sound mean, Andrew. I'm actually going to change the camera angle because I look very fat and pregnant there. Just to not sound mean, Andrew, but you sound like you have COVID too.
Do I?
Yeah, like you're quite like nasally. So
Okay, that's okay.
but get well soon, hopefully. And listeners, I touch wood and everything that I can touch. I haven't had COVID yet, to the best of my knowledge. which is
Wow.
mad. Yeah.
You're tempting fate, though. But, well, if I sound a bit different, then I apologize, listeners. Hopefully, I'll be back to normal by the next.
It can't be helped. COVID is rife at the minute. Just grateful we're not in a lockdown, hey?
Exactly. But are you ready for some true crime?
Yes, let's go for it. Let's see what you've got to say, and hopefully it won't be too distressing for me or our listeners.
Okay, then. So, if it's safe for you to do so, I'd like you to relax. Close your eyes and picture the scene. Today, I'm taking us back to the 11th of May, 2020. And today, we're in the village of Barlaston in Staffordshire. Now, it's got a population of around 3,000 people. It's a well-to-do area, known mainly for the fact that Wedgwood, the famous pottery maker, has a factory there and has had one since 1940. And the Barlaston First School, that is situated there, has now been in existence for over 140 years, Rachel.
What's the town called, sorry?
Barlaston.
Barlaston. Lovely.
Yeah. Probably pronouncing that wrong, but yeah.
And what, take this part out, but what part of the country are we?
Staffordshire, so it's near Stoke.
Staffordshire, Stoke, right,
The
okay, got you.
Midlands, yeah. On this day in May 2020, we're deep in COVID lockdown territory. So while it may have been an unusually mild day for the time of year, with the temperature at its best failing to get past 11 degrees Celsius, which is 52 degrees Fahrenheit, it wouldn't have mattered much to most people, given they were stuck inside anyway. Now, I'd like to take us to one particular home in Bardaston, and that's to the home where Carla Foster, who was 44, and her long-term partner, Stephen Burks, lived with their 3 children, who were 19, 15, and 11 at the time. So while the pair were in a long-term relationship, it was an unusual one. In 2019, the pair had actually split up, but due to COVID restrictions, Carla had moved back into the home where lockdown began so that they'd both have unrestricted access to their children. So
that's nice. It was obviously an amicable split as well, because that can't have been an easy decision, but
no, it can't have been, no. And it was especially important, Rachel, because, well, it's important for any child, but especially for the middle child that they had, because the middle child had autism. So he would have struggled not having regular contact with both parents for such a prolonged period of time. But as a result, though, of moving back in, due to convenience, it did rekindle their relationship and they became a couple again.
oh, COVID couple, COVID romance, eh?
Yes. On the 11th of May, at around 4:25 in the afternoon, Carla dialed 999, the emergency services, to tell them that she was 28 weeks pregnant and she suspected she was having a miscarriage. So
I know this case.
Oh, do you?
I do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good then.
Yeah, and I know why you put that one in at the height of the episode as well.
Yes. When the paramedics attended, she said that either in August or September of the previous year, she suffered a miscarriage and had been told that she was not pregnant. But her GP had recently told her that he thought she had not expelled a miscarriage. So he had given her drugs in order for that to happen. The paramedics gave her a quick examination, and based on that and what Carla had told them, believed that she was not pregnant and left. A few hours later, at 6:39 p.m., Carla's partner, Stephen, called 999 to tell them that Carla told him she thought she was in labor and to call an ambulance. While he was on the phone to the emergency services, Carla gave birth to her daughter, Lily, who was not breathing when she was delivered. The paramedics arrived within 20 minutes, and despite the fact that Lily had not been breathing this whole time, they attempted resuscitation, taking over from Stephen, who had also been trying to resuscitate Lily in the meantime before they arrived. Lily would be rushed to the hospital in an attempt to save her life, but would ultimately be pronounced dead at 7:45 p.m. Carla was also taken to the hospital to be treated for matters related to the birth. So, a post-mortem was carried out on Lily, and it was determined that she was between 32 and 34 weeks gestated, and the cause of her death was a combination of stillbirth and the maternal use of drugs which are designed to create an abortion. They determined that if Lily was 32 weeks old, then she had been conceived towards the end of September 2019. So while the pair were separated the year before, Carla had gone on dates with other men, which, is pretty normal given she was single at the time, isn't it, Rachel?
Yeah, well within her rights to date.
Exactly. And she had brief relationships with two of the men she'd gone on dates with. And in or around September of 2019, she fell pregnant to one of them. She wasn't sure, she said, which one she fell pregnant to, but it would come out later that she didn't know. So when the police spoke to both Carla and Stephen, both in their home and at the hospital, they initially came to the viewpoint that this was a tragic incident with no suspicious circumstances being attributed to Lily's death.
So can I just ask, if there's a death of a baby and paramedics are on scene, do the police just naturally get alerted? Like, why were they alerted at all, if at all? Were there any suspicions from the doctors? Or
No, but it's when there's a death, then naturally, because they have to, when it's, basically, they're naturally alerted.
The reason I'm asking that, listeners, is I can imagine, like, in normal circumstances, it would be quite a traumatic event. Obviously, very traumatic event that you're going through, and then to have to like speak to police about it when you're trying to come to terms with it yourself would be like just. I would be thinking, why am I speaking to you? I've just lost my child. Do you know what I mean?
No, I get it. Yeah. So no, you're right, but Carla's first proper actual police interview didn't come until 4 days after the birth, and it was voluntary, so she didn't need to go in to speak to them then. And it did occur in the police station, and she didn't even have any representation from any solicitor or legal representative with her.
What?
So that showed you how informal it was. And she proceeded to give the police a partial account of what happened. But for Carla, she didn't realise it was one that had inconsistencies in it. Because she did admit that she had contacted BPAS, which is the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, because she wanted an abortion, and as a result had obtained the drugs required to have an abortion in the post from them, and that she had taken those drugs. She told the police that she didn't realise how pregnant she was until she had felt the head of the baby when she was giving birth. And it's possible that she may have conceived in either October or Christmas of the previous year. So when because there was a post-mortem, because it was an unexplained death. So when the post-mortem results came, and because of the interview Carla had with the police, where she admitted taking the abortion drugs, the police began an investigation of Lily's death. After almost a year and a half had passed since the birth, and the police, they were still investigating the death. They asked Carla to go back in for a second interview. She agreed, and on the 16th of December 2021, she attended, and when she was told that the doctor believed Lily was delivered at 32 weeks, Carla replied that she did not think she was that far gone, and had, since the death of Lily, worked out that she was about 24 or 26 weeks pregnant when she took the drugs.
Wow.
She did, though, admit in that second interview that she had lied to BPAS about how pregnant she was to ensure that they sent her the drugs, and that she had first found out she was pregnant in December of 2019 when she took a pregnancy test.
And can I just ask as well, again, just from my knowledge, BPAS, they were purely giving out these drugs over the phone because it was during COVID. Their normal procedure would have been to meet the patient, assess how far along they were, and then prescribe the drugs, right?
Yeah. I'll go into that in a little bit detail later on, but yeah, that's exactly right, yeah. So Carla went on to say that she was too embarrassed to see a doctor about her pregnancy because she did not want her partner Stephen to find out that she'd had sex with another man when they had been separated. Which sounds like a fair enough thing to say, if you ask me.
I mean, reasonable. I don't know whether that's the right word. I guess there's an element of panic, right? You're not with anyone, you're having consensual sex, you fall pregnant, and then in a whirlwind in which she was pregnant and not back with her partner because COVID had not struck at the point that she will have known and have taken a pregnancy test. She has made a conscious decision at that stage. So to then hide it for as long as she did, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm not sure that is that's what I would classify as reasonable behavior. I'm not like take the abortion out of it, take the abortion pills out of it. I'm just saying like she COVID so COVID was rife or spreading across Europe in the February, and then we went into lockdown in the March. At that point, if she's claiming she took a test in December, she'd have been 5 months, maybe even 6 months pregnant. And she's not back with her partner at this point, is she? So yeah, I think she's made a conscious decision, not a rash decision, but a conscious decision to keep that from him. But that's
No,
just my opinion.
no, that makes sense. So yeah, in the interview, she had been cautious about what she said to the paramedics when they first attended for that exact same reason. She did admit to telling them that she was 28 weeks pregnant, and she agreed that she was past the legal limit to take the abortion drugs when she took them. So on the 16th of June 2022, some 6 months later, she was notified that she was being charged for the crime of child destruction and would appear in magistrates' court 3 days later on the 19th. So when that day came, her solicitor entered no plea or gave no indication of a plea, which is actually, this is pretty common, Rachel, because when something's guaranteed to go up to Crown Court, it's quite often there'll be no plea. It could be for a number of reasons. It could be to get legal aid because most crimes in Crown Court qualify for legal aid. It could be on this instance, it was pending some expert reports, some prosecution papers, and some mental health assessments. So it could be for a number of reasons why he didn't put a plea in. However, yeah, it's not uncommon for that to happen.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like in her defense at this stage, I'm thinking, why would you enter a plea? Why would you want to enter
Yeah,
a plea? It's been 2 years that they've been investigating the case. Your thoughts are probably going to be along the lines of, it's a very tricky case to navigate. That's why it's taken them 2 years to charge me with anything. I'm going to see how it plays out before I start, and entering not guilty, guilty, like, yeah, whatever that looked like.
yeah, yeah. You're right. So 2 months later, on the 18th of August, at a trial preparation hearing, Carla's barrister asked the prosecution if they'd given consideration to charging her under Section 58 of the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. Now, I don't expect anyone to know what that is, given it's quite obscure and over 160 years old. So here is what that section actually states. Every woman being with child who, with intent to procure her own miscarriage, shall unlawfully administer to herself any poison or other noxious thing, or shall unlawfully use any instrument or other means whatsoever with the like intent, and whosoever, with intent to procure the miscarriage of any woman, whether she be or be not with child, shall unlawfully administer to her or cause to be taken by her any poison or other noxious thing, or shall unlawfully use any instrument or other means whatsoever with the like intent, shall be guilty of felony, and being convicted thereof shall be liable to be kept in penal servitude for life.
Wow.
So, yes, I did just say for life. So it could have actually come with a full life sentence in theory.
That's how much, like, that's how outdated that
Yes.
act is.
Yes.
Like, Fucking hell. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, there's a very emotive subject on the cards right now, and something that I expressed at the top of the episode we're not going to share our own personal opinions on. But that is archaic. Yeah.
Yes. So the prosecution stated, because don't forget this was a defense suggestion, not a prosecution suggestion. The prosecution stated that they didn't see much difference between that and the original count of child destruction, so they agreed to add an additional charge in addition to the original one. So Carla would plead not guilty to the charge of child destruction, but she would plead guilty to Section 58 of the Offences Against a Person charge. There would be no trial due to the second guilty plea, as the first count was eventually dropped by the prosecution. So when he was sentencing Carla, the judge summed up a few things, and I'm going to go over a lot of them here because I think the information is useful for us to give us a bigger picture, Rachel, and also to give us an opinion on the final sentence.
Yeah, go for it.
So the judge said that under abortion laws in the UK, a woman would usually be required to attend a clinic to obtain and take the first set of drugs she needed to induce an abortion, and then she'd be able to take the second set at home to complete the process. But due to COVID, on the 30th of March 2020, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care approved a woman's home as a suitable place for abortion treatment due to COVID, meaning attending clinics couldn't and wouldn't need to occur.
And like the thing is, COVID was like we were dealing with the absolute unknown in every aspect of the word, weren't we? So again, what else were they meant to do than give women an option, which women and men are and should be entitled to options for their body, and for their safety and for the their health and their mental state during, like, I know this term really got on my nerves during COVID, but it was unprecedented times.
It was, you're right. This was actually, just as an aside, it was challenged at the time by various anti-abortion groups in the high courts, but they lost all those challenges.
And I can see why.
Yeah.
Again, it's very emotive subject, and at the minute, isn't it a lot talked about, assisted suicide, being that there are opportunities for people to take advantage of the system. And I imagine that would have been a similar potential risk in this particular law being passed.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm not talking about abortion medication here in particular. I'm talking about everything, but regardless of what the eventual procedure or system is, there's always opportunity for people to try and take advantage, isn't there?
Yeah.
Regardless of what area it's in. I don't just mean healthcare, but anything.
No, I agree.
So the judge pointed out that Carla's claim she only found out that she was pregnant in December was contradicted by the fact that on the 1st of February 2020, a message on her phone would show that she knew she had been pregnant for 3 months already. That would put her knowledge to at least around the start of November. Further searches on her phone would show that by mid-February of 2020, Carla was searching for ways she could induce a miscarriage, and by the end of February, she was searching for abortion services. A search on the 25th of February shows that on that date, Carla believed that she was 23 weeks pregnant. Throughout March and April, her internet searches continued in relation to how to have an abortion, and on the 24th of April, she searched with the term, "I need to have an abortion, but I'm past 24 weeks." On the 6th of May, Carla called BPAS, remember the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, but she gave them false answers on the telephone, so it would seem like she was only 7 weeks and 4 days pregnant. After that call, the abortion drugs were posted out to her. On the 9th of May, Carla took the first lot of drugs, and on the same day, she undertook an internet search that would indicate that she thought she might be at least 28 weeks pregnant. On the 11th of May, the day she gave birth to her daughter, she took the second lot of drugs. Further internet searches by her that evening after she gave birth would show that she thought she was at least 30 weeks pregnant by that time. The judge went on to state that this shows when she spoke to both the police and medical staff, she knew she was lying about how pregnant she was.
Mm.
The judge also did state that this was a tragic case, and the vast majority of women and girls seeking an abortion only do so after the most anxious of consideration. That is often a very difficult decision, and it's always intensely personal and painful. Equally, the vast majority of women and girls recognize that they must make a decision about whether to seek an abortion at an early stage of their pregnancy and well before the 24-week limit imposed by law. The judge stated that there was no modern-day sentencing guidelines for a case like this, obviously showing that he knew that you can't lock her up for life for this crime. But he did find a similar case in which a woman had received 3.5 years by the appeal court.
Wow.
The judge accepted Carla must have been in turmoil about the whole situation. While she may not have been suffering from any mental health conditions at the time, she now suffers from deep depression and often has nightmares and flashbacks about seeing her dead child's face. He said he was taking into account she was a good mother and that one of her children had special needs and needed her love and support. He would sentence Carla to 28 months in prison and said it was a tragedy that she did not plead guilty at the magistrate's court, because if she had done, she could have had a full early plea reduction and he would have been able to suspend her sentence. He said that she'd spend half her time in prison, so 14 months, and the other 14 months on license. So Carla's defense, they would appeal this sentence, Rachel, stating that it was too harsh. The ground for the appeal was that not all of the mitigating factors were taken into consideration, and also a number of high-profile medical experts and doctors had actually wrote to the original judge at the time, appealing on behalf of Carla. At the time, the judge dismissed that appeal from them, saying that it was wholly inappropriate to do such a thing, and he gave the example that it'd be equally as inappropriate for people lobbying against abortion to have done the same thing to him.
Mm.
The appeal judges would agree with the original judge on the aspect of that letter, stating that the medical experts and doctors should have known better. But the appeal judges did say, well, it was one appeal judge actually, did say that there was a large amount of mitigating factors for this case, and that combined, they should have affected the sentence. And the appeal judges would state that a prison sentence in a situation like this would serve no purpose for anyone and would only harm both Carla and her family when she is already suffering enough. They would state that this is a case that required compassion, not punishment. So they reduced Carla's sentence to 14 months suspended so that she could be released immediately. So, Rachel, I know it's quite a different case, but I think it's important to get a wide spectrum on our show. And it's quite a sensitive topic. So I guess a few questions for you, if you don't mind. So what are your views on this case, okay? On this case, I guess, the sentence, how she obtained her drugs, and also anything else, including, because I am obviously, I've never been pregnant, so when the judge is stating, like, you knew, basically to where you knew how far gone you was, you knew your pregnancy. I mean, this is a woman who has been pregnant 3 times before and given birth 3 times before. So does that experience, would that lend to more knowledge, or how would that work?
Well, first of all, just for context, like I'm 35 weeks pregnant, and since 26 weeks, although a lot earlier than that, but since 26 weeks, I've had a lot of baby movements. And like, I mean, the movements started for me like 16 or 17 weeks pregnant, but they've become a lot more like apparent. And I know like when my baby's awake and what's going on and where they're moving and how they're moving. So to have been pregnant up to 32 to 34 weeks, which is from what I understand what they had determined the fetus was at
Yeah.
her time of birth. Carla, unless the placenta was in such a way where she couldn't really feel the baby move a lot, Carla would have been actively every day feeling that baby inside of her kicking. So for me, that's a really hard thing to acknowledge and consider when obviously all these things are wearing around her head as a mother of three, one of the children already needing her more of her care and attention. Like, I can't comprehend how desperate she must have felt in those dark hours and in COVID and being unaware of how she gets out of this situation. And ultimately, probably the hopeless romantic in me feels like she'd have just wanted to just be with her long-term partner again and for everything to be perfect and not have these things to worry about. Like she probably would have spent her days wishing time she could rewind time and have had those encounters with those men. Um, so that kind of answers that part of the question. But what I did want to kind of comment on was when you started to go through the judge's summary and the rounding up of the case and whether or not it was appropriate for a jail sentence, I started thinking to myself, what crime has been committed here? And like I answered my own question in those moments. The crime that was committed was that she wasn't truthful. She lied to the police. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she lied to the paramedics. She did not give the level of detail that was required to anyone that could have been able to assess and manage that situation that she was in effectively. I think that's the number one crime that's been committed here because I don't have any views I wish to share on the actions that she took because I've not been in a situation
Do you
and I can't feel like I can judge her or try and walk a mile in her shoes and comprehend what she was going through.
do you believe
Be-
that? Do you believe that if she had been truthful from the start, they wouldn't have taken it to court over this?
Yeah, I think she'd have been dealt with from a mental health services perspective, or at least I hope she would have been dealt with from a mental health services perspective and treated with dignity and care that she so clearly needed, especially, handling the flashbacks and the post traumatic stress and the depression. Um, but the police have done what they've needed to do because they've found a case that she's had to answer because of the lies.
I think you might be right because when the original judge, said that he found a similar case, that was again one where the mother hadn't been truthful and hidden. So I guess it was a similar situation there where with the similar factors.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I agree.
And I don't envy the judge. I don't envy the judges that had to sit through the initial trial and then the judges that had to review the case post, the initial sentencing.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
I'm guessing as well the officers that had dealt with the case and had to put, the case together for the prosecution must have had to have some form of counselling as well, because what I learned from the research I did into the Lucy Letby case is you're dealing with children that have no voice. They can't speak for themselves, and lives have been lost at such a young age where, like, they're helpless and innocent, and it must be really difficult for people to wrap their heads around the actions that have been taken to
Yeah.
get to where they are. So yeah, I mean, I hope I'm not fobbing off your questions there. I'm
No, no.
just, yeah, trying to answer as honestly as I can with my thoughts on the case, whilst being sensitive to the individuals, because yeah, I don't think there's any other way we can speak about this.
I get one last question, and you don't have to answer this one, Rachel, if you don't want to. With regards to, obviously, COVID was unusual for all people for many things, so that's why they allowed the drugs to be administered at home. Now, the doctors and the experts who wrote to the judge originally to try and appeal on behalf of Carla, they said that being able to administer these drugs by telephone, basically, was groundbreaking and a significant step forward for the abortion services for future women. Now, the question I have is, I and obviously the people on the other side said that if that never happened, then Carla would have been assessed at a clinic, and that would have never happened in the first place. So the
But the
question,
clinics weren't open.
yeah, oh, I know that, but I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that's the argument that they said. I guess the question I have is, now these people are pushing for the fact that this just to be the norm, that they can be administered via telephone. Do you think that is correct, or do you think there should still be that initial face-to-face consultation first?
I believe, again, just to caveat, not experienced the need to use this service in my life, and I feel very fortunate for that. But I believe that there are services that are needed remotely because there are people that are unable to break away from home. They might be bound at home for disability reasons, or they might be isolated, from people that keep them inside and away from, like, society, that can't just turn up at a clinic and be assessed. So I think that there would need to be, like, on a case by case basis, a very hard assessment on how patients are dealt with in these circumstances. But in terms of the norm for the process, absolutely, you'd want to be seeing patients face to face, in my opinion, and you'd want to be talking to them and making sure that they're not being pressured into making that decision as well, because not only are females, in charge of making a decision, sometimes they are pressured into making these decisions. And I feel in a clinical environment, those healthcare specialists could identify that, and see that someone is being pressured into doing something they don't want to do. So, that would be an opportunity to help that individual on the other end of the spectrum.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect. I didn't think about that aspect, but yeah. Sure. Shall I wrap this up, this tragic story, Rachel?
Yes, yeah, I think so.
So this has been season 4, episode 5, called Compassion, Not Punishment. Now, sometimes in life, crimes are committed where the perpetrator can seem to be suffering enough from committing the crime, and that any legal punishment wouldn't even come close to how they're suffering anyway. In situations like that, is it really appropriate to punish, or is it a case where no additional punishment should be expected and always given? So thank you everyone for listening to this, and we will be back next week with one that's a little bit easier on our ears.
I would appreciate that. Thank you, Andrew. No, thank you for bringing the case to us. And I hadn't actually wanted to hear more about this case because I'd heard of it. It hit big headlines in the UK last year, and I'd actively chosen not to hear more about it. So I'm grateful that positioned it the way that you did, and brought it to us. Yeah, and we got to learn about it without hearing some of the things that the press sometimes aren't afraid to tell, some of the finer details.
Yeah, I didn't know about this case, so I read it just from all the legal papers. So that's probably why I thankfully missed those parts out. But okay, everyone, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.